The defending Super Bowl champion Eagles are coming to US Bank Stadium. So how do we go about breaking them down? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Today on the show, we are firmly in Eagles mode, pre-bye, Ireland, England, all well in the past, right? We are looking at what is going to happen when the Vikings square off against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday at US Bank Stadium. And there's a lot of questions going into this one about who's going to play at quarterback, who's going to be healthy enough to play at quarterback, tons of injured players that are like on the verge of coming back. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We shall see. As of this recording, I don't have any injury report information other than a couple of quotes that people are, if we're being honest, overanalyzing. So I'll leave that to them. They seem to be very passionate about it. And instead, let's just talk about the Eagles because they are in a weird spot. They're in a slump. And tomorrow on the crossover, I am going to ask Louie about all this and hopefully get some good answers as to like what's going on. The vibes are weird with AJ Brown, and Devonta Smith and the run game's not working right, and the defense isn't working as well as it was before. But I wanted to look deeper into who the Eagles are. I really took a really deep dive into the Tush Push. I wrote an article about it at Wide Left. I did a Patreon video about it at patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL, and I'm going to give you the spark notes of that later in this show, of not only what makes the Tush Push go, why they are so good at it, why they are perceived to be so good at it, but how you maybe would go about stopping it, because that will happen in this game. There's going to be 1 yard to go situations, and the Vikings are going to have to be prepared. What can they do differently than some of the other teams that have struggled? But where I actually want to start today is on the other side of the ball. No matter who is at quarterback, there will be opportunities here. There have been opportunities for other quarterbacks, especially in the last couple of games that the Eagles have lost. And we actually have a pretty good familiarity with what we're about to see. Now, the Vic Fangio defense is a pretty different thing in terms of how it operates from the Ed Donatel defense. But when Ed Donatel was here, if you were an everydayer back in 2022, you learned the system, the way that it operates out of its base front, the way that it determines who is good, which edge rusher drops into coverage or not, if they're in like a 5-man surface, the way it sets which side of quarter, half, or half, quarter, which side's on the strength, right? So like an interesting thing here. This is a very Vic Fangio stat. Thank you to True Media for it. But the Philadelphia Eagles run cover 2 at one of the lowest rates in the league. They run cover 6 at one of the highest rates in the league. All of their other coverages, as tagged by PFF is where True Media got that data, or at least our version of True Media at Locked On. All the other ones are roughly normal. They run a normal amount of cover 3, cover 1, and all those other ones. So their defense is pretty average in terms of coverage, in terms of like coverage play calling, except when everybody else is running cover 2, they will lean more toward cover 6, which is quarters on one side, halves on the other. That's a very Fangio thing. And that means that becomes an exploitable thing, especially when the corners on the other side aren't necessarily better. The difference between halves and quarters, the main difference is instead of one guy deep, you got 2 guys deep, right? Well, who's that extra guy? It's the cornerback. In cover 2, that cornerback's playing underneath. In cover 4, that guy's playing deep. And so that's what we want if the Eagles have a struggle at cornerback. We want them to put themselves in situations where that cornerback is playing in cover 4 instead of cover 2. It is harder for a corner to play quarters than it is to play cover 2. Cover 2, 7-11, you get it, right? The situation in Philadelphia right now with potentially no Quinyon Mitchell. We're going to be watching that injury report, by the way. They've got their own version of the problems we have here. So we're watching the injury report to see if Quinyon Mitchell plays. If it's Quinyon Mitchell and Adoree Jackson, this loses its teeth a little bit. But if Kelee Ringo is going to get significant snaps, which is he's been the one filling in while Quinyon Mitchell is hurt. He's given up over 100 yards in passing over the last couple of weeks. He has been targeted a lot, especially against the Giants, where they kind of identified him and went at him, and it worked. I think you want to maybe try to do that. And the way to do that is to try to dictate the matchup. But here's the problem. I was on a different Philadelphia podcast just this morning. I'm recording this deep in the night. And we were talking about like the way that the Philadelphia Eagles defense works. And in any Fangio style system, they want to set the coverage. If they're in cover 6, you got to pick which side is quarters and which side is halves. They want the half side to, well, there's a bunch of different reasons to pick one or the other. But against the Vikings, whenever they go up against Fangio style defenses, the Vikings will see the call that in these systems, they call it Zeus, and then the player's jersey number. So in our case, it would be Zeus 18. And that means that it's quarter, half, with the half set to Justin Jefferson. So if Justin Jefferson goes in motion, the coverage will actually flip. If he goes in motion pre-snap. They really want a safety over the top on Justin Jefferson's side of the field. The advantage of this is that, like, if you are in true cover 2, one of the ways that the Vikings want to take advantage of that is crossing routes. The Vikings love big, deep crossing routes. Lots of offenses do, especially off the McVay tree, because it screws with everybody's coverage rules. It's super easy. If I'm a safety, it's super easy for me to say, okay, I have everything deep on this half of the field. Or, you know, we're going to have our pass off rules, our zone coverage rules, where if he goes deep and outside, I take him. If he goes low and inside, you take him. But when somebody crosses the center, crosses over the ball, and becomes part of the other side's coverage rules, we drop them. You got to pick them up. And you have to completely readjust your coverage rules because it works totally differently if we have 2 receivers in our area versus 3, or eligibles, I guess I should say. So we like to do that, right? In Zeus 18, if you do that, well, there is a poaching safety over there, the inside quarter safety. This would be like Reed Blankenship, who is watching for specifically this. So you can't get Justin Jefferson to cross the field over into the quarter side. It's kind of built to want you to do that. And then that guy's like hunting interceptions. Instead, you eschew Justin Jefferson entirely. I don't mean take him out of the game plan and don't throw to him, but I just mean in these plays, you let him be on the half side. You can run a basic or whatever you think is a cover 2 beater over there. You can be part of that. But what you do is, because the Eagles play sides, you know where every corner is going to be on every play. They don't try to mess with that. You put Justin Jefferson away from the corner you're trying to exploit. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but you got a Jordan Addison as well. You let Justin Jefferson get doubled, bracketed. They're going to do it kind of no matter what. They're going to do it. So, like, don't bend over backwards trying to stop them from bracketing Justin Jefferson. They've got all the different ways in the world to do it. Instead, you now have Jordan Addison running quarters beaters on his side. And always have it that way. Call your plays such that there is a quarters beater away from Justin Jefferson and a cover 2 beater toward Justin Jefferson. And the Eagles have 2 options. They either play right into that and be in the wrong coverage all the time, or they give up on Zeus 18, which we would love for them to do. That's what you want to do. And what I would imagine happens is that turns into coverage opportunities with Jordan Addison against Kelee Ringo. That's what I'm after. Could even be Jalen Naylor. Somebody that you think can beat Kelee Ringo, can run by him, can exploit bad leverage or whatever. and you get going on that. I think that there is an exploit there with the Fangio style. Here is the rub. Fangio blitzes more than all of his like weird spawn that never blitzes. Fangio blitzes a perfectly normal amount, which is weirdly unique to Fangio in these systems. I have no idea why the Ed Donatels and who is the Packers guy, I forget, that like never blitzed. Never really understood that. And it was pretty bad and they all been fired. Brandon Staley too. Pretty bad and they were all fired. But that means that they're going to be able to get pressure. Another injury situation we're watching is Jalen Carter. Will he play? What's his deal? I'm going to ask Louis all these questions on the crossover, by the way. And so you got to keep the quarterback upright. And he's got to be able to find these opportunities when you get there. But the thing about these Fangio defenses is it's kind of like Brian Flores, which is they only have so many coverages. And a lot of the deception is all in the pre-snap and taking away information in those early parts of the play. But eventually, you have to declare your hand. And after the snap, those coverages are, they kind of fall into one of three buckets. And you just have to identify which bucket you're in. Okay. I still want to get to Tush Push stuff and anything else we can get on the Eagles right now. That'll all be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you want to get in on games like this or maybe other stuff going on around the league that's in prime time that you otherwise would have no stake in, right now is a great time to get involved because new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick any bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Right now, the Vikings are 2.5-point underdogs at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. If you believe that line is wrong one way or another, maybe you think it's way too favorable to the Vikings, maybe you think people are totally forgetting about the Vikings and they're going to crush them and them being home underdogs is a sin, whatever it is, put $5 on it. If you're right, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Or if you're not confident at all, you can just go with like a Chiefs money line. It's -700 to beat the Raiders and they're at home. If that happens, $300 to use across the app, no matter how easy the bet is. So, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So, let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Moving right along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Let's get into let's push a little tush. Let's get into some of that tushing and pushing. So I am going to give you the spark notes of like a long project that I did over the weekend, which included a tape breakdown of every tush push that the Philadelphia Eagles have run so far, statistical breakdowns, which I will get into here momentarily, a 3,000-word article at Wide Left, and like a 25-minute video on all of them on Patreon. I have spoken in the Philly podcast sphere about this, talked about it a little on the squad show, but I'm going to give you the broad strokes now. So if you don't want to go into any of that paywall content, I would love it if you did, but and my Patreon video will become free eventually. But here's the deal. It's a QB sneak, and it behaves a lot like a QB sneak. And in fact, statistically, the only distinguishing factor about the Tush Push versus everyone else's QB sneak is volume. The Eagles call it more. The Eagles will call it on 2nd and 1, and then if it doesn't work, they'll call it on 3rd and 1. If it doesn't work, they'll call it on 4th and 1. Other teams won't do that. If they sneak on 3rd and 1 and they get stuffed, they'll probably call something different on the 4th and 1 if they go for it. The Eagles won't do that. They'll just keep spamming it. And the stat is, this is from True Media, 115 times the Eagles have run the tush push since 2023 when it first became a thing. There have been 115 QB sneaks. I define that as quarterback rushes with a yard or less to go. One of the, I put that stat in front of a few people, and one of the questions I always get that might be popping into your head, so I want to preempt it, which is, what about 2 yards? What about when they call it on 3rd and 2 and then get a yard, and then call it on 4th and 1 and then get a yard? Does that count? So I'm talking about first down percentage. Any QB sneak over the last 10 years has been on average about an 80% play. If you have a yard to go and you call a quarterback rush, I know I'm probably picking up some zone reads or weird scrambles in there, but it's vast majority is QB sneaks, and they convert at about an 80% clip. The tush push over that time has converted at an 80% clip. It's been basically about the same. In 2023, if you just want to like sort it by season, the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles season was one of the most successful in the last 10 years. It was a top 10 most successful season at QB sneaks in the last 10 years. The last 2 seasons, 24 and what we have so far of 25 in terms of just first down conversion percentage, has been very pedestrian in that. So the idea of the tush push as this unstoppable entity, I think, is overblown. It is a QB sneak, and QB sneaks are an 80% play. That's a really good call on 4th and 1 for pretty much anybody. The tush push itself, the way the Eagles do it, isn't converting at a higher rate at all. They're just calling it more, so it's more visible, so it feels more annoying to you. That's really what's happening here. And I'll take it even further, because so much of the discussion around this is about should the rules happen, and I like, should the rules change about it? And I really get stuck anytime I think about how the rules would change to stop the Eagles. And what is it about the Eagles that we are trying to stop? As the proposal went that narrowly failed last offseason, cited in it was safety. Safety and pace of play. Those are the two. The pace of play thing, I think, was more about like preventing like what happened in the NFC Championship, where people are just going to get so frustrated that they jump off sides and stuff. And then player safety was the other thing. This idea that if everyone's pushing on each other, eventually you're going to get a bunch of injuries. They did an internal investigation about it as part of that proposal. They found no injuries as a result of the tush push. I can't really point to any from the 2024 season, except for Chris Jones in the Super Bowl, who lined up sideways. I'm going to get to why he would have done that, but he lined up sideways and ended up like tweaking his neck. But he did return to that game, so I don't think it counted to the NFL's internal investigation. And he would later leave that game with a different injury. That feels like a pretty weak example, and it's the only one until you get to Thursday night in 2025, and they run it 4 times in a row. And on the 4th one, somebody's knee gets rolled up at the bottom of the pile, which is pretty standard QB sneak stuff. And the actual push of it all didn't have a lot to do with that. You can kind of see somebody getting blocked into, I think DJ Davidson was his name. Whoever the guy next to him gets blocked into him and rolls him up. The pushers were not involved in that way in the play. So I don't think it has much of a player safety argument. There is the possible risk of future injury, but this has been a play for 2.5 years now, and we haven't really seen more injuries on this play than you would expect on any run play or any QB sneak. I think the argument that is more unsaid but is more prevalent is that it is in some way unfair. So how do you ban it? Well, do you ban pushing the runner from behind? It used to be banned. 20 years ago, that used to be a thing you couldn't do, and they changed the rules, and this is, I guess, what we get 20 years later, so we just want to go back to that old rule. And the argument that I made, and I made this to a bunch of Eagles fans. I wonder if any Eagles fans are listening now. I hope so. Hello, welcome. Is that if you do that, you will not stop the tush push. You will get some interesting byproducts. And I don't even know if you dislike these byproducts, but they're worth considering. The situation where you have a fight at the goal line, let's say there's a 6-yard rushing touchdown, right? Not like a QB sneak, but a true run play. and there's a collision at the goal line, and they're fighting and they're fighting and they're fighting, and then like two O-linemen come up behind the runner and they push him in and they finish it. That would also be an outlawed thing. That would become a penalty. You would get more flags. Maybe that is a player safety issue, and there should be a flag there. I don't really see, I can't think off the dome of like a lot of examples of that, but if you investigate it and you find out I'm super wrong, sure. I'm not thinking that hard about it. So that's something to consider. And then you also have to consider the defense, right? On a QB sneak situation or really any goal line run, it almost always devolves into one or two players have caught the runner, right? And we're pushing on each other at the goal line, and all of the defenders come rally and push the defense from behind. So the defense is doing the same thing as the offense. Are we banning it from the defense too? I'm not 100% opposed to that, but we should think about it, right? So at the end of the day, you can ban that stuff, and maybe you don't want those things to happen. Maybe you don't want these rugby scrums to start happening in the middle of plays. Sure, we'll talk about that. But in terms of slowing down the Eagles because you think it's just too automatic of a play, you won't even do that, and it's kind of a weenie move anyways, if you ask me. Get good and stop it. And as I've illustrated, it's no different than another QB sneak, at least statistically, right? It's just that the Eagles give themselves 3 chances to convert, so they convert. And I think you, dear viewer, and your QB sneak team can probably do it too if you had the cojones to call your QB sneak 3 times in a row from 2nd and 1. Probably just getting it. The only other team that has run it nearly as much as the Eagles ran 115 since 2023. The Bills have run 87. That's the next closest team. After that, I believe the Broncos are the next team with 50. That's now less than half of the Eagles, and that's 3rd place. And everybody else is somewhere in like the 40s or the 30s. The Eagles just run more QB sneaks, and anything with a sneak is going to be about stepping together, keeping the space between you and the guy next to you as minimized as possible. The Eagles very uniquely split together. Like the split just refers to the distance between O-linemen, and they line up with the tightest splits I've ever seen, the tightest splits possible. They line up bumping shoulder to shoulder. And I actually think if you do want to ban the Eagles from their sneak and you think it's too dangerous, having some kind of minimum split distance that would only change this and otherwise not mess with too many other plays could be an answer, because the tight splits change a lot of the way that defenses do things. And it tricks the defense into doing something kind of suboptimal that the Eagles then exploit and they convert. And so many of their successes work this way. Let me explain next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Gametime, the best place to find last-minute tickets. The Vikings are back stateside. They're playing at home again. And if you just got to get yourself out to a game, there is nowhere better than Gametime. There's nothing like being in US Bank Stadium, feeling the Skol chant reverberate through your rib cage and getting excited, doing the fight song after every score. But getting tickets can be a huge nightmare. Queues, login screens, random price jumps at checkout. It's pretty frustrating, and that is what Gametime is for. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. As of this recording, I am going to pull up Gametime and see exactly what the cheapest ticket you can get in the door at US Bank Stadium is. And it looks to me, there is a cheap seat all the way up in the third deck, over the corner on the visitor's sideline, $125 just to get in the door. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. So how do you attack the Tush Push? If it is this unstoppable force, and I'm talking all this mad nonsense about how you do it. Well, we saw the Giants find a way. In that sequence where the Eagles went 4 of them in a row, they did get a first down and then a touchdown, but they went 2 and 2 on conversions there. They just had extra downs because they got it to 3rd and 1. So really, the best answer to the tush push is don't let them get to 2nd or 3rd and 1. Stop them at 3rd and 3, and now they have to do a regular run play, and we'll see if they can pull that together. Again, I've got questions for Louis about why the run game hasn't been the way it has been, why the defense hasn't been quite the force that it was in the past. But assuming you're already in that situation, what do you do? So if I asked you right now, by gap, A gap, B gap, C gap, where does the tush push go? What would your answer be? Vote now on your phones. You're all voting A gap, right? Between the center and the guard. It's going right up the middle. And you would, if you would say that, you would be right about most QB sneaks, but you would be wrong about the tush push. This is the most misunderstood thing about the tush push. This was first brought to my attention when I saw Brett Coleman's video about it that he made last year, so kudos to him for pointing this out. But now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it. This thing goes up the B or C gap, I guess, behind the tackle, basically, really often. and so it's a QB sneak, right? So every team has their QB sneak defense. And I think teams are just calling their QB sneak defense and saying good luck. And I don't think that they should make an adjustment for the Eagles. When you call your regular QB sneak defense, you have a defensive tackle in each A gap, and you have a defensive tackle in each B gap, usually. So between the center and guard, between the guard and tackle on either side of the ball. Because the Eagles split so tight and scrunch everything together so much, physically, there is not room for all of those big boys on the D-line to be in their gaps the normal way. They have to be outside of their gap a little bit, and then they have to tilt their alignment toward the A gap, toward the center. So everybody is kind of tilted. It's like perspective lines. Everybody is lined up really low and tilted to the inside. Their alignment is cocked. So what that does is expose your midsection to outside blockers. And so this is how the Eagles get you. You have somebody who's supposed to be the kind of B-gap defender, tilted alignment inside because everything is so tight, that's the only way he can actually be pointed the way he's supposed to be pointed, which means tilted away from Jordan Mailata and a tight end. It's been Kyler Granson this year. Those two guys will then double team you, and there's nothing you can do because you're accepting a whole bunch of force from the side. Try it with a friend, right? Push on each other. Feel how hard it is to push each other, to move each other, right? Resist and feel how it is. And then turn to the side and have your friend push on you and feel how much easier it is, right? One on the shoulder, one on the hip. That's the best way to do it. And then you can really, really move somebody. So you'll see guys that good players, George Karlaftis taking like a huge L here. Brian Burns like taking just absolutely disgusting L's. No, it wasn't Brian Burns. It was somebody else in New York. I forget who. My apologies. But getting like washed to oblivion. Jared Verse getting destroyed on these plays because they're lined up in a way where the down blocks from Jordan Mailata and whatever the tight end is are going to explode them. You have to be willing to keep that down block from just surfing the whole line away. And if you just look at like the configuration of people after a tush push, it is always that the front left line has moved forward and the whole line has kind of swung like a door and pushed everybody back, not from the center, but from that left side with Jordan Mailata. He's really important. Landon Dickerson is really important. He's out right now. I don't know if he's going to be able to play or not. I don't know the extent of his injury yet. But as Brett Toth in the meantime, those guys are really important. And then that tight end is really important. More important, I think, than the center. I mean, they did this with Jason Kelsey, famously undersized center for so long. And now they have Cam Jurgens in there. But The other thing that they do is, because, again, teams are doing their QB sneak defense. So when you think about a QB sneak, a normal one, where does the quarterback go? He goes low and straight ahead, right? He is trying to sneak underneath. He'll crouch really low and try to get ahead a yard. So to defend it, the two guys in the middle usually just dive straight forward because they expect to meet the quarterback there. But the Eagles go high, which is counterintuitive. Usually low man wins and it's not good leverage, but because you only need a yard, it's okay. They wait for the defensive players to essentially dive forward and land on the ground, dive underneath them, and then they'll just kind of fall forward on top of it. And then suddenly Jalen Hurts can ride this thing like a surfboard. Suddenly you've pancaked both of these blockers and Hurts can just dive over the top. So on the goal line, you'll actually see him do that, dive over, stick the ball over. But even in midfield situations, all he has to do is essentially climb over you, right? Just kind of jump on top of the O-line and it's a conversion. So he's got two different things that are kind of not typically where the sneak goes, where he can go where there's a little less resistance. He can either go a little bit to the outside and run behind that left tackle because that left tackle is killing you on the angle, or he can go up and over the top of defensive tackles that have gone a little bit too low. So I love the way the Giants played this. And they had, stopping the Tush Push 2 out of 4 times is a really good result for any QB sneak. So I think that that result is worth couching. And what they did was, for one, they had a cornerback on that side, on that left side with Mailata and Granson. And if those guys were going to down block, which they always do on the Tush Push, your cornerback, if he's like waiting off the edge, this should be Isaiah Rodgers. If he's waiting off that left edge, is never going to be blocked. He can scream right in and take Jalen Hurts out. And the Chiefs actually got to stop that way in their game against the Eagles this year. So you have that element of it. And then they do have their D tackles go low and the O-line kind of folds over them. But they had Kayvon Thibodeau, and once it was Dexter Lawrence because he's a freak, jump over the top of everything and essentially meet Jalen Hurts, who's also trying to go over the top. Grab him by the shoulders and drag him back. And now it doesn't matter if you get blown out in the rugby scrum because you're taking the ball carrier back. The ball carrier never gets to go there. Those are the three elements you need. You need an outside protector to punish those really aggressive down blocks from the left tackle and tight end. You need somebody to go low, and you need somebody to go high. It's like each gap has 2 gaps to it. There's the high A gaps and the low A gaps, and you need to cover both of them. I think if you can do that, you're not going to win every Tush Push, that's for sure. But I do think you can do better than that unstoppable vibe that it has. We have not yet seen a team really do this against the Eagles and really stop it. But we have seen over the last 2 years, the league sort of catch up and normalize it back into the efficiency of a normal QB sneak. That's my Tush Push spiel. And I think that that's the best way to stymie it. And I think it's up to the teams to look at what other teams have done, how other teams got their stops, and try to incorporate those ideas with some consistency to punish the Eagles for running these plays. Tomorrow is crossover Thursday. I'll probably go over a couple of these other points, but I'll mostly just point to this episode for Eagles fans. And I'm going to ask, I have so many questions for Louis about, what's wrong with the vibes, injury report stuff, who is playing. I'm sure he's going to ask me plenty about what's going to happen at quarterback. This is 2 teams in a lot of flux right now, kind of at a crossroads, and potentially inflection points for both of their seasons. So I'm really excited to break it down. I will see you all tomorrow with that. And as always, Skol.